30 years. That woman had 30 years with my brother, and she used every single one of them like a slow-draining battery pack, pulling just enough out of him each day that he never noticed how empty he was getting. My name is Cole Bryan. I'm a 58-year-old retired corrections officer from Louisville, Kentucky, and I have spent the better part of my adult life watching human beings in controlled environments. I know what a caged person looks like. I know the specific stillness that develops in someone who has stopped expecting anything different from their situation. I recognized it in my brother Dean 3 years into his marriage with Sheila. I just didn't know what to do about it until the night he called me from a parking lot at 2 in the morning, shaking so hard I could hear it through the phone. Wednesday, September 3rd, 2:14 a.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Patrice didn't move. She sleeps the way righteous people sleep, which is deeply and without guilt. I grabbed the phone, saw Dean's name, and was already sitting up before the first ring. Finished. Dean. Breathing. Then, Cole. One word. My brother's voice. And something in the one word that I hadn't heard since we were 9 years old and he'd fallen off the garage roof and couldn't figure out if he was hurt or not. Where are you? Kroger parking lot. Hyde Park. It's 2 in the morning. I know. I couldn't go home. There was this thing with the fishing trip and He stopped. Started again. Cole. I asked her if I could go fishing with Butch's cousin next weekend. One weekend. I haven't been fishing in 4 years. 4 years. I waited. She said no. Said she needed the garage reorganized before the Pattersons come over next month. Cole, the Pattersons aren't coming until October. I can go fishing and reorganize the garage and still have 3 weeks left over. I told her that. You know what she did? Tell me. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She looked at me and she said, "I thought you cared about this family," and walked out of the room. A pause. I've been sitting in this parking lot for an hour because I don't know how to go back in there. I looked at the ceiling. Patrice's hand found my arm in her sleep. She has radar, that woman. And I put my hand over hers for a second. Dean. Stay on the phone. Tell me everything. He talked for 91 minutes. I know because I checked my call log the next morning, and 91 minutes still felt like he'd barely scratched the surface. The promotion at his engineering firm, the one 12 years ago that would have moved them to Portland. Dean had wanted it, had practically already accepted it in his head. Sheila called his supervisor directly and declined on his behalf. Told the man that Dean had decided the timing wasn't right for the family. Dean found out from his supervisor 2 weeks later. Sheila's explanation. I was protecting us. The savings account. Sheila's name only. Always had been. Dean's direct deposit went into it. Dean got an allowance. He used that word. Allowance. And I had to physically stop myself from saying something. For gas. And lunch. Marcus Ford. Dean's closest friend since college. The man stood as his best man at their wedding. Sheila decided, roughly 8 years ago, that Marcus was irresponsible and a bad influence. Because Marcus had gone through a divorce, and that kind of thinking is contagious. Dean hadn't spoken to Marcus in going on 7 years. Tyler and Mara. His own kids. Good kids. Both of them, but raised in a house where they watched their father ask permission to exist. Tyler was 26 and still thought that was how marriages worked. Mara had moved to Columbus 2 years ago and called her dad when she knew Sheila wasn't home. I sat in the dark of my bedroom in Louisville and I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter. The feeling of a decision forming. Dean, I said when he finally ran out of words. Go across the river. Get a room at the Covington Inn. I know the manager there. I'll call ahead. Cole. I can't just... You're already in a parking lot at 2 in the morning. You've already left for the night whether you meant to or not. Go to the Covington Inn. I'm coming to Cincinnati. A long pause. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. I swung my legs off the bed. I've wanted to for about 25 years, brother. This just finally felt like the right time. Patrice was awake when I hung up. She didn't pretend otherwise. How bad? She asked. Bad. I turned on the lamp. I'm going to Cincinnati. She sat up. Looked at me the way she's looked at me for 32 years. Steady, clear, already 3 steps ahead. The switch. The switch. She nodded slowly. We'd talked about this. Not seriously, not as a real plan. Just one of those conversations married people have when they're frustrated about something they can't fix. What if you just went and… The sentence had never finished until now. How long? Week. Maybe 10 days. She reached over and picked up her phone. I'll call the school and reschedule your sub-coverage. Patrice teaches 4th grade. She has handled every complicated thing in our lives with the same calm she uses to explain fractions. It is one of the reasons I love her unreasonably. You're going to need to practice his handwriting. He still does that thing with his 7s. I know. We're identical, Patrice. Not strangers. You haven't been in the same room with Sheila for 4 years. She's going to be looking for anything off. She gave me the look. Practice the 7s, Cole. I practiced the 7s. I arrived in Covington on Friday morning, September 5th. Dean was in room 114 of the Covington Inn. A good room. River view. The kind of place that's comfortable without being impressive. He looked like a man who'd slept for the first time in years and hadn't quite figured out how he felt about it. We sat across from each other at the small table by the window, and I studied his face. Same face I've been looking at since before I can remember. Same jaw. Same eyes. Same slight asymmetry on the left side that only matters to us. 58 years of the same genetic information diverged into 2 entirely different experiences. Dean looked at me the same way. This is strange, he said. It's always strange. We're twins. No, I mean, he gestured between us. You look like what I think I'm supposed to look like. Does that make sense? It made complete sense. And it was the thing that decided it for me, right there at that table. More than anything else he'd said on the phone. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to tell me everything. Schedules, routines, what she makes for dinner Monday through Sunday, what you watch on weeknights, what you drive to work, what route you take, what time you're expected home. Her patterns, her triggers, her tells, everything. Cole, she's going to know. She might. Eventually. I picked up the coffee cup. But I promise you she's going to spend the days before she figures it out, more confused than she has ever been in 30 years of managing your life. And that confusion is going to be educational for everyone. Dean was quiet for a moment. Then, the smallest thing, the corner of his mouth moved. She reorganized the garage last spring. There's nothing in it that needs doing. I know. She made that up. I know, Dean. He looked out at the river, the Ohio moving slow and gray in the September morning. She told my boss I didn't want that promotion. I know. You told me, I wanted that promotion, Cole. I know you did. He turned back to me, and for the first time since I'd arrived, he looked like my brother instead of a man I used to know. Don't blow up my house. I'm not going to blow up your house. I set the cup down. I'm going to remind it what you sound like. We spent all of Friday and Saturday in that hotel room. Dean talked. I took notes, actually took notes, a yellow legal pad, because Patrice was right about the details. Sheila's schedule, her coffee order in the morning, the specific way Dean loaded the dishwasher that she'd corrected enough times that it was now muscle memory for him. The neighbors to avoid, the ones who were genuinely Dean's people. The way Sheila referred to his engineering work as your little projects, Dean said it so neutrally that I don't think he even registered it anymore. I registered it. Sunday morning, September 7th. Dean caught a Greyhound to Louisville. Patrice was waiting for him at the station. She'd agreed to host him, feed him, and keep him off his phone unless it was an emergency. Her words to him at the door, as relayed to me later, were, "Come in, eat something real. Your brother's got this." Sunday afternoon I drove Dean's car, a sensible gray sedan that had Sheila's preferred radio station already programmed, across the river and into Hyde Park, Cincinnati. I parked in Dean's driveway, sat for a second. 30 years she ran this man. 10 days, I figured. 10 days of a different version of the same face. Let's see what Sheila Vance does when the machine doesn't run. I got out of the car and walked into my brother's house. Welcome back to Sweet Family Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment below and make sure you subscribe. You're going to want to be here for what comes next. Sheila was in the kitchen. Sunday dinner, pot roast, which Dean had mentioned was her signature performance dish. The one she made when she wanted the house to feel like everything was fine. She looked up when I came in. "You're late." Traffic on the bridge. I set Dean's keys on the hook by the door. Right hook, Dean had specified. Always the right hook. And walked to the kitchen like I'd done it 10,000 times. Because Dean had. 10,000 times at least. "The Pattersons confirmed for October 15th, Sheila said, not looking up from the stove. "I told them we'd do dinner here. I need you to look at the garage this week. The shelving on the left side has been loose for months." "I'll take a look," I said. "Also, your mother called. I'll call her back." She called twice. I turned, looked at Sheila directly. She was still facing the stove, poised, composed, the specific posture of a woman who expects her words to land without requiring eye contact to enforce them. 25 years of watching people in institutions taught me something. People who control others rarely look at them when they're giving instructions. Eye contact implies negotiation. Instructions don't negotiate. "I'll call her back, Sheila," I said, same tone, no edge. She didn't respond, which meant that was fine. I didn't know it yet, but that exact exchange, so small, so routine, was going to feel completely different to her by Wednesday. Dinner was quiet. Tyler stopped by. He lives 12 minutes away in Oakley, worked at a marketing firm downtown, and ate with us. He looked at me once, across the pot roast, with an expression I couldn't fully read. Not suspicious, something more careful than that. I filed it away. After Tyler left, after the dishes were done, I did them without being asked, which apparently was not Dean's pattern, because Sheila watched me from the doorway with an expression like she was checking if the step was broken. I sat in the living room and watched the evening news. Sheila came in at 9, sat in her chair, picked up her book. 10 minutes passed. "You're quiet tonight," she said. "Long week," I said. "Good quiet, though." She turned a page. I looked at the television. Good quiet, though. Dean had told me she hated that phrase, that he'd used it once, years ago, and she'd told him that quiet is never good. It just means something's being avoided. I waited. 30 seconds. What does that mean, good quiet? Means I'm comfortable. I didn't look away from the TV. Means the house feels okay. Doesn't always feel okay. A pause long enough to park a car in. "The pot roast was good," she finally said. "Yeah," I said. "It was." I went to bed at 10:30, lay in Dean's bed in Dean's room, and looked at the ceiling. He's been sleeping in this room for 30 years. Same ceiling, different man than he started as. Not for long. Monday, September 8th, 6:45 in the morning. I was making coffee when Sheila came downstairs in her robe, already operating, already in the mode I'd come to think of as management posture. Chin up, shoulders set, the morning briefing face. "The Hendersons are coming Saturday," she said, pulling her mug from the cabinet. "I need you to confirm the menu with Sandra Henderson. She has that dairy thing now, and move your thing with Tyler to Sunday. Also make sure your car is out of the driveway by 10. Sandra comments on cars. I poured my coffee, turned around. No. Sheila stopped, not froze. Stopped. The way a machine stops when you pull a plug. Everything that was in motion just ceased. What? Tyler's thing stays where it is. My car's fine in the driveway. I picked up my mug. Call Sandra yourself about the dairy thing. You're better with dietary details than I am anyway. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd heard since leaving Louisville. Sheila's face did something I don't think her face was accustomed to doing. It searched, scrolled through responses the way you scroll through a menu looking for something that fits the situation, and came up empty. Dean. Very measured. I'm just asking you to... I know what you're asking. Still calm. Still warm even. Not cold. I wasn't being cold. That wasn't the point. The point was simply that there was a man in her kitchen who meant what he said. I'm good on all of it except those 3 things. Those 3 things I'm passing back. She left the kitchen without finishing her coffee. I didn't know it yet, but she was going directly to her phone, and who she called would become very important before the week was out. Monday's no sent ripples. By Monday evening I felt them. Sheila was pleasant at dinner, specifically, deliberately, surgically pleasant. The kind of pleasant that is designed to make you feel the weight of the alternative. See how nice this can be when you cooperate? Dean had described this exact mode. He called it the good weather warning. Sunny skies right before she needed something. I was thinking, she said, passing the salad, that we could repaint the den before the Pattersons come. The den looks fine. It looked fine 3 years ago. It looks dated now. I like it. Pleasant face. Persistent. I just think it would be nice. Then let's talk about it after the Pattersons come and we see whether they even notice. I took the salad. No sense painting for guests who might not care. She put the salad bowl down with slightly more precision than necessary. That's two, I thought. Keep going, Sheila. Wednesday, September 10th. Mara called in the afternoon. Dean's younger daughter, 23, calling from Columbus. She called the house phone, which I'd noted was her pattern. She avoided Sheila's cell whenever possible. Hey, Dad. Her voice was bright but listening, the specific brightness of a child who has learned to take emotional temperature before entering a room. Hey, sweetheart. How's Columbus? Good. Really good. Hey, are you okay? You sound different. Oh, she's sharp. Different how? I don't know. More. A pause. Dad, did you actually tell Mom no about something? I smiled at the wall. Why do you ask? Because she called me Monday and said you were being difficult. And Dad, I've never heard her use that word for you. She uses that word for Tyler when he pushes back. She never uses it for you. Things change, I said carefully. Dad, softer now. Is everything okay? Like, are you okay? She deserves the truth. Not yet. But she deserves to know something real. I'm the best I've been in a while, Mara. I promise. You don't need to worry about me right now. A pause. She was working something out. Okay, she said slowly. I believe you. Good. Come visit soon. Bring your appetite. I'm cooking Saturday. You're cooking? You never... Another pause. Okay. Yeah. I'll come Saturday. I hung up and stood in Dean's kitchen for a moment. She knows something's different. She just doesn't know what. And the fact that her first instinct was concern, not irritation, not suspicion, that tells me everything about what kind of daughter Dean raised, even from inside a managed house. I texted Butch Keller in Louisville. How do you feel about a drive to Cincinnati Saturday? Butch texted back in 4 seconds. Do I get to watch you do the thing? Yeah. Leaving Friday night. What time? Thursday, September 11th. Sheila called Roberta. I know because Tyler told me. He stopped by Thursday evening on what I was beginning to understand were increasingly frequent visits. He'd been by Monday too, and again Wednesday for 20 minutes. Each time he watched me with that careful, unreadable expression from Sunday dinner. Thursday he stayed for an hour. We sat on Dean's back porch, September evening, cooling off, the Hyde Park neighborhood doing its quiet thing around us. She called Grandma Roberta. Tyler said, not a question. Did she? Said you were going through something, and that Grandma should probably check in. He picked at the label on his bottle. Grandma Roberta called me after, asked me if Dad seemed okay. What did you tell her? He looked at me sideways, that expression again, careful, precise, landing somewhere between a question and a statement. I told her Dad seemed great, he said. Best I'd seen him in years, honestly. We sat with that for a moment. Uncle Cole, Tyler said quietly. I didn't answer. I figured it out Monday night. He said it flat, no drama. You hold your coffee mug different. Dad holds it with both hands. You hold it by the handle. I've been watching you for 3 days. The coffee mug. Patrice would have caught that. I should have caught that. I looked at my nephew, 26 years old. His father's face, his father's steadiness, but something in his eyes that Dean had spent 30 years losing. How long have you known your dad needed something to change? I asked. He looked out at the yard. A long time. Since I was about 12, he said. And she told him he wasn't allowed to coach my Little League team anymore because it conflicted with her book club. I put my coffee mug down. Both hands. He coached 1 game. Tyler said. I remember it. He was good. He was laughing. He paused. I don't remember the last time I saw my dad laugh without checking first to see if it was okay. The yard was quiet. The neighborhood was quiet. Something in my chest that had been wound up since Wednesday's parking lot phone call unwound about 2 full turns. Tyler. I turned to look at him directly. I need you to not say anything to your mother. Not yet. Can you do that? He looked back at me, his father's eyes. Uncle Cole. I've been not saying things to my mother since I was 12 years old. I think I can manage a few more days. If you've been here a while and you want stories like this to keep coming, hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. Thank you. For real. Now let's get back to it. Friday, September 12th. Sheila brought out the silence. Not the conversational quiet, the weapon, the specific loaded atmospheric silence that Dean had described as her heaviest tool. The kind that fills a house like weather, where every room you walk into has the pressure of something unresolved pressing on the ceiling. I've worked in corrections, I've worked with people who used silence as a weapon for 20 years and had perfected it to an art form. I've sat across from men who hadn't spoken in 3 days, as a power move. I made coffee, made breakfast, left Sheila's portion on the counter under a plate, went to Dean's home office and worked on the crossword I'd brought from Louisville. At 11 a.m., Sheila appeared in the doorway. I don't understand what's happening with you. I looked up from the crossword. Patient. Unhurried. What do you mean? You've been different. Since Sunday. You're not talking to me. You're not. Reframed. Sheila Vance Bryan was not a woman who easily showed confusion, but what was on her face right now was as close as she got. I feel like you don't care about what I need right now. I hear that. I set the crossword down. What do you need? I need you to. She paused. The framing had been ready. She'd walked in here with it loaded, but something about the direct question seemed to interrupt the delivery mechanism. I need things to feel normal. I think things feel pretty normal to me, I said. I made breakfast. I checked the garage shelving, fixed the left side. By the way, it was just 2 loose screws. I've been right here all morning. That's not what I mean. Then help me understand what you mean, Sheila, specifically. The specifically landed somewhere. I could see it land. She looked at me for a long moment, and for the first time since Sunday, maybe for the first time in a very long time, I saw something behind the management posture. Not softness, exactly. Something more like the outline of a person who had been operating on a particular strategy for so long that being asked to name it, out loud, to someone who wasn't going to flinch, was a genuinely new experience. She left the doorway without answering. I didn't know it yet, but she was going to call Roberta again. And this time Roberta was going to say something that changed the weekend entirely. The best thing about being a twin isn't what people think. It's not the finishing each other's sentences or the feeling pain across distances thing. It's simpler than that. It's that somewhere in the world there's a person who has known your face longer than anyone, longer than your parents, longer than your wife, and when that person shows up at a moment that matters, something in you that's been braced for a long time finally gets to breathe out. Saturday, September 13th. Butch Keller arrived at 9 a.m. in his pickup truck with a cooler of drinks, a bag of chips, and the energy of a man who'd been waiting his whole life for exactly this situation. Sheila answered the door. Butch, she said, the name alone carrying an entire filed complaint. Sheila, Butch, God bless him, has never in his life acknowledged subtext. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Brought drinks? Dean around? She looked past him, at the truck, at the cooler, at Butch's general presence in the universe. He's in the kitchen. He walked past her like a man who'd been walking through doors his whole life without checking if they were open. In the kitchen, Butch set the cooler down, looked at me, and performed an extraordinary act of discipline. He held it together completely without a single crack in the facade. Morning, he said, like we'd done this 100 times. Morning, Butch. I handed him a coffee. Glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it, he said, and the way he said it had enough dry humor in it to fuel a separate story entirely. Mara arrived at 11. She walked in, hugged me. I let her hug me. Dean's daughter with the specific, careful feeling of something borrowed and precious, and then held me at arm's length. You look good, Dad. She looked at me a beat longer than a daughter looks at a father she talks to every week. Then something settled in her face, and she let it go, and she went to pour herself coffee. She knows, I thought. or she's close. But she's choosing to let it be whatever it is. Marcus Ford arrived at noon. I'd called him Wednesday, as Dean. Voice steady, words careful. Marcus. It's Dean. I know it's been too long. Way too long. I'm having some people over Saturday. I'd really like you to come. A silence on the other end long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then Marcus, very quietly. Dean. Yeah. I'll be there. 59 years old, Marcus Ford. Heavier than the photos Dean had shown me. Gray at the temples. The same wide, steady face of a man who'd weathered something and come through it. He looked at me for a long second. Then he walked forward and put both arms around me, and I let him, because whatever he thought he was hugging, the gesture was 30 years overdue, and it belonged to my brother regardless. Man, Marcus said into my shoulder. Man, I missed you. I know, I managed. Me too. Sheila came down the stairs at 12:15 and stopped on the bottom step. She looked at the kitchen, at Butch, at Mara, at Marcus Ford, at the food I'd made, at the general occupied warmth of a house that had been quiet for so long that it had apparently forgotten what full felt like. Her face moved through 4 expressions. Then she straightened, walked into the kitchen with her chin up. Marcus. Flat. I didn't know you were coming. Dean invited me, Marcus said, with the specific pleasantness of a man who does not owe anyone in this room an explanation. Great to see you, Sheila. She looked at me. I looked back at her. Steady. Comfortable. At home in this kitchen in a way that, I could see her registering it, didn't feel quite right, and didn't feel quite wrong, and was slowly, quietly, making her feel like she was the one who'd walked into the wrong house. I'm glad you're here, I told her. Eat something. Roberta arrived at 1. I hadn't invited Roberta. Sheila had. Which meant Sheila had been on the phone with her mother again and had decided she needed reinforcement. Which meant Sheila was more off balance than I'd realized. Roberta Vance was 79 years old, small, upright, sharp-eyed in the way of women who've spent a long time paying attention to things they couldn't change. She came through the door, kissed Sheila on the cheek, surveyed the room, and when her eyes landed on me, they stayed. Dean. She held out both hands. I took them, looked at her. Something in her face was doing the same math Tyler had done Monday night, and she was further along in the calculation. Roberta, glad you could make it. Been a good week, I said. She held my gaze 1 beat longer than comfortable, then moved into the kitchen. I didn't know it yet, but Roberta Vance had made a phone call that morning that had nothing to do with Sheila. The afternoon moved the way good afternoons move, with noise and food and overlapping conversation. Marcus and Butch found each other immediately and settled into the easy back and forth of 2 men who'd both spent years in Dean's orbit and had never been allowed to meet. Tyler arrived at 2, walked in, looked around, saw Marcus Ford, and said, "Is that? Did someone actually invite?" And then caught himself and sat down and said nothing else. Just watched the room with the same quiet attention he'd had all week. Mara sat next to Roberta at the kitchen table. I watched them from the doorway, a conversation I couldn't hear over the general noise. Something passing between them that was low and careful, and real. Sheila managed the room the way she always managed rooms, moving through it, directing, repositioning, offering drinks people hadn't asked for, steering conversations. The performance was smooth. It was always smooth. But the room wasn't responding the way rooms usually responded to her. Because the room wasn't organized around accommodating Sheila Vance Bryan. It was organized around a man she'd thought she'd fully managed 20 years ago, doing things she'd shut down so completely that the people who remembered him doing them had stopped expecting to see it again. At 3:15, I raised a glass. To Dean, I said. The room went quiet. Wherever he is right now, and I know exactly where that is, this one's for you. The room raised their glasses. Even Sheila lifted hers, slightly, with an expression I couldn't entirely categorize. My phone buzzed. A text from Dean, from Louisville, from my house where Patrice had made him eat 3 real meals a day and sleep 8 hours, and apparently also watch old baseball games and cry once, productively, about the Portland promotion. I can hear them from here. Go get 'em, brother. I put the phone in my pocket. Looked up. Roberta was watching me from across the room. Not suspicious exactly, something more like recognition, the expression of a woman who has seen this face before and is deciding quietly what to do with the information. She put her glass down, stood up, and walked over to me with the deliberate steadiness of a 79-year-old woman who has decided she's done waiting. "Walk with me," she said. We stood on Dean's back porch, the September afternoon cooling around us, the Hyde Park neighborhood going quiet in the way it goes quiet on Saturdays, just enough sound to feel inhabited. Roberta looked out at the yard. "You're not Dean," she said. I didn't answer. "You're Cole. I've known since you took my hands at the door." She paused. "Dean always hugs me. He doesn't take hands. You took my hands because you didn't know." I leaned against the porch railing, the handshake. One more detail I missed. "Are you going to say something?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "My husband ran the same house for 41 years. Same methods. Different name." Her voice had lost whatever was careful in it. What was underneath was just old and true and tired. I watched Sheila learn it. I thought she was protecting herself, learning how to be strong. I didn't understand what she was learning until it was too late. "Roberta, she learned it from me," she said. Flat, no drama, just a fact being put down on a table. "I taught her by showing her that this is how you keep someone. This is how you make sure they don't leave." A pause. "I lost my husband 12 years ago, and he was in that house with me for 41 years, and I don't know if he was ever happy. I've never let myself ask that question directly until just now, standing here, watching my daughter do it to your brother's house." The yard was quiet. "She loves him," I said, because I believed that was true, in whatever way she knows how. "I know she does." Roberta's voice was steady, but something in it was fraying at the edges. "That's the worst part." So did I. I looked at this 79-year-old woman on her son-in-law's back porch, holding 30 years of a pattern she'd handed down without meaning to, and I felt something that was not satisfaction and was not vindication. It was something heavier and more honest than either of those things. "Will you talk to her?" I asked. Roberta turned to look at me. "Dean's brother. The man who'd driven 4 states and worn his brother's life for a week because a phone call from a parking lot at 2 in the morning had finally made it impossible to do nothing. That's why I came today," she said. At 4:30, Dean's gray sedan pulled into the driveway. Patrice had driven him. She came in first, gave me a look that said, "I know everything and I'll debrief you later," and went to introduce herself to Marcus Ford. Dean walked into his kitchen. Same face, same height. Same 58 years of shared genetics in the same room for the first time in 10 days. He looked around. At Marcus. At Butch. At Tyler, who stood up immediately from his chair. At Mara, who made a sound she quickly covered with her hand. At his house. His kitchen. Full. Then he looked at me, and I stepped aside. Because the point of the whole 10 days, every no, every steady morning, every conversation, every cup of coffee held correctly, was this: getting out of the way, giving my brother back the room he'd been slowly squeezed out of. Dean walked to the kitchen table, sat down. Tyler sat across from him. Mara put her hand over her father's. Sheila stood at the edge of the kitchen, watching. The management posture was gone. What was in its place was something more complicated, something that had been loosening all week, and had finally, in this moment, come entirely undone. She looked at her husband, and her husband looked back at her. And whatever passed between them in that look was theirs, and I didn't need to witness it. I walked past her to the back porch. Roberta was already there. "She'll talk to me," Roberta said, without turning around. "Tonight. After everyone leaves." "How do you know?" "Because she called me Thursday crying, saying Dean was different, and she didn't know how to reach him." A pause. "And I told her that if the only way you know how to hold someone is to put them in a box, and then the box stops working, you have to learn how to just hold them." And she asked me how. Roberta was quiet for a moment. I told her I'd show her. Tonight. I stood next to her, and we looked at the yard in the September afternoon. Some lessons don't need a closing argument. I left Cincinnati on Sunday, September 14th, drove back across the river, across Kentucky, back to Louisville, back to Patrice and our house, and my coffee mug that I hold by the handle, because I've always held it by the handle. Dean called me Monday night, not from a parking lot, from his kitchen. I could hear the difference in the acoustics. "She agreed to counseling," he said. "How'd that go?" "Cole, Roberta." He stopped, started again. Did you know? About her husband? She told me Saturday. She cried. Sheila cried. I didn't know what to do with that. A pause. I've never seen Sheila cry about something that wasn't a strategy. How did it feel? A long silence. Like maybe there's something there, Dean said quietly. Something underneath all of it that I maybe stopped looking for a long time ago. Yeah, I said. Maybe. The counselor is Wednesday, he said. First session. Good. Cole. The tone shifted. Something more careful. She asked me this morning very directly. She said, "Was that Cole the whole time?" And "What did you say?" I said yes. A pause. And? She was quiet for a while, Dean said. Then she said, and I want to get this right because it was the first thing she said in 30 years that felt like it came from somewhere real. She said, "He's the only person who ever looked me in the eye and waited for an actual answer." I sat with that. That's something, I said. Yeah, Dean said. I thought so too. Marcus Ford called Dean the same week. They talked for 2 hours. There is a standing monthly dinner now, first Saturday, Hyde Park. I've been to 2 of them. Tyler told me last month that his dad laughed at dinner. A real one, unguarded at something Marcus said, and that he'd had to look away for a second because he wasn't ready for it. That's the one I'm going to remember, Tyler said. Yeah, kid. Me too. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.